Welcome to the Zero Waste Asia Newsroom. I'm Sonia Astudillo, reporting live from Ottawa, Canada, where we are tracking the latest from the fourth session of the intergovernmental negotiations of the Global Plastics Treaty. As we are nearing the end of the negotiations, key questions remain about the influence of industry representatives and their involvement in regional meetings, while the voices of impacted communities are left unheard. But yesterday, observers such as civil society organizations were provided opportunity to speak. We're here to break down these elements as they're impacting the negotiations. Joining me again is GAIA Asia Pacific's Plastic Policy Officer, Arpita Bhagat. Hi, Arpita. How are you?
Hello, reporting live from Shaw Center. I'm here. This is 9:15 Canada time.
So, Shell reported that in the last INC, there were more industry representatives than member states. And this time around, the numbers further increased to 36% more. What is going on here? Is it even ethical to have them here at the negotiations?
Well, it's been a recurring issue, of course, and it's concerning the civil society groups a lot. And we have been asking for a conflict of interest policy from the Secretariat. I believe we did that even before getting here without actual knowledge of the participants. The participant list, this is a provisional list that the Secretariat releases on the first day or second day of the INC that was released, I think, around on Wednesday or Tuesday. And it was evident that there is a lot of industry here. There is more industry than the entire delegation of many countries combined, which is, of course, concerning because of their vested interest in preventing an ambitious treaty and preventing a treaty that looks at upstream action with global targets, with reduction in actual polymer production and so on. And at the same time, you see the narratives of the business coalition, of various groups in pushing the agenda that plastics are not the problem. Plastic waste is a problem, and that is something that we are hearing here. And the worst part of it all is that a lot of the industry, a lot of the petchem and plastic producing companies are part of the official delegation of some member states, including from Asia. Actually, a lot of them in Asia have brought in large delegations, which includes industry voices. And therefore, we know that there is a real sort of impact and real voices of industry being spoken by the delegates themselves. So that's quite a worrying situation, and it continues to get worse. Like you said, CL did the same analysis last time, and this analysis this time around shows 37% increase. And I don't know what do we expect in INC-5? Do we expect a 50% increase or 40% increase or what? So it feels like an unsafe space. It feels like a very clear-cut, fight between two polarized groups at this point, even in the discussions that we've been having so far. So that's definitely worrying. But we also see member states inviting the communities. Just today, the EU delegation invited the indigenous peoples and affected community to come and speak, meet with them and present their perspectives. We have some countries who are calling for recognizing indigenous peoples as a right holder group, as not just a stakeholder, but a partner to this particular treaty. So there are those positive developments. There are those voices who are understanding the dire need for action. So it's not all lost, but it is what it is.
So let me clarify that. So for Asia Pacific, is the industry joining the regional meetings as delegates or observers?
Yes. Yes, as delegates, unfortunately. And I'm trying to speak slowly because there's still some people around me. But in Asia, we do see industry being very much part of the official delegation as delegates. not just as observers.
So last night, observers, including civil society organizations, were given an opportunity to speak. So for example, we had Nina talk on the waste trade and how it impacts Indonesia. So how did the plenary respond to these messages?
Yeah, so very late in the night, we had the start of plenary. I think it was around 9 p.m. Local time. And there was a lot of course, this plenary was stock take of report back from the 2 contact groups and the 5 subgroups respectively on the progress made so far. Most of the groups have done the first reading of the revised draft with few elements remaining as of yesterday, but those have been covered today. Essentially, there was a lot of, and plenary are live streamed, so you can probably find a link to those on the UNEP INC-4 website, webpage. But there was a lot of back and forth about the process on how we are going to proceed. There was a lot of concern about from the Africa region, for example, of meetings going beyond 10 p.m. That really affects their ability to participate. Like, let me tell you, we are starting the meetings, delegates are starting the meeting in some cases as early as 8 a.m. for their regional consultations every day. And the meetings are going on till 11:30 on many days, except the first one. It's been going on for that long, and we expect that today it's also. And the second point being that they don't want, there are certain groups of countries who do not want 3 subgroups, basically 3 small groups having discussions on the draft, which makes it difficult for certain countries who are very small delegations to participate. For example, from Pakistan, you only have 1 delegate. It's not possible. He's not omnipotent that he can be present in three different rooms at the same time. So there was a lot of back and forth about it. I think the understanding is that we will have 2 contact groups, 2 subgroups happening at the same time, for 1 from each contact group, not 2 subgroups from the same contact group. So for example, if they are discussing on the core obligations, it will be limited to 2 subgroups, not 3, because that's how the countries have divided themselves. Some have studied the means of implementation, some have focused on core obligation, including scope, objective, different provisions under that, including primary plastic polymers, chemicals of concern, fishing gear, waste management, EPR, and all of that. And then means of implementation includes financial mechanism, capacity building, technology transfer, as well as the annexes. So yeah, after all of that, back and forth, we finally arrived at the point where observers finally had space to speak. And we didn't have space to speak in the plenary on day 1, and it's now the 4th day yesterday that finally observers had the space to make their interventions, and much awaited intervention from GAIA. Also, we had our members speak on our behalf, presenting our views. We had Nina, like you said, presenting her views, not just calling out for ending waste colonialism in Indonesia, but across, speaking from the mouth and speaking on behalf of so many affected communities in Asia who face the danger of plastic waste that we didn't create, right? So it was very important. And Nina also earlier this week during the march, I think on the weekend, on Monday, before the start of INC-4, met with the Canadian Environmental Minister with the hope of support for ending plastic colonialism, because plastic waste from developed countries, including Canada, US, UK, Japan, ends up in the river systems of Asian countries, especially in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and so on. So that was very powerful. And then we also had space for, like you said, Soledad, who is again from Latin America, who spoke on behalf of an International Alliance of Waste Pickers, who managed to, there has been discussion on the just transition provision, with many countries speaking for the due consideration for waste pickers, but many only focusing on the need for disproportionate support in terms of finances and capacity building. So it's been very interesting divide, and we are glad that we had the representative from the International Alliance speak for waste pickers who have come prepared with their perspectives, who have looked at even the streamlined text on just transition and spoken very affirmatively on what just transition means, how they want it to be defined, how they want it to be represented throughout the text of this ongoing prospective agreement, and how it needs to define waste pickers and workers and other communities, and not bundle them up in a all-encompassing affected communities bracket, because there is a market difference between how waste pickers as the communities who are managing the waste of the world versus communities who are like us, who are perhaps maybe living close to landfills or living close to polluted water systems and so on. So very powerful moments, very powerful statements. There's also powerful conversation. There's also a media briefing that the Indigenous Peoples Caucus hosted today with all women speakers representing all of the regions of the world, and it was very well received, very well participated. I believe the recording is also available online. So what we see here is communities in this space, even with the presence, even with the domination of industry, really trying hard to make their voices heard, really creating spaces for themselves, even though it has not been easy at this venue in Canada.
So it's Saturday night here in Ottawa, and we have 2 more days before the chairman strikes the gavel, signaling the end of INC-4. Are we anywhere near a first draft? What are the major wins and losses?
We are nowhere near the first draft, unfortunately. We have, but progress has been made. We have moved slowly, but the first reading of the revised zero draft has been done in these 5 subgroups. And the streamlined text from the co-chairs of these subgroups are also up on the UNEP website for folks to see. And now, starting today, what the exercise that we are going through is a second reading where member states are again sort of looking at the streamlined text, and the streamlined text includes text which has been, sort of crossed out, which is to avoid duplications, moved around based on member states' preferences, but majority of this text is still bracketed. That means it is not agreed by all parties, so it will remain bracketed. And now, as with the second reading, there's going to be more smaller changes. It's more line by line. So if I can tell you, one para took 2 hours to go through, literally one para. It's not one provision. It's not like the entire provision took 2 hours. It's just one paragraph of one provision. So it's my personal perspective that I don't think we're going to be able to get through the whole text line by line again, even with the streamlined text where duplications have been removed. It looks very difficult, and we do not want member states to kind of be up all night and up all morning, because that really affects who is in the room. The people with the larger delegations can take rest in turns, whereas those with very small delegations do not have a choice. So we do not want these negotiations to continue. And still at this point, it's amazing that we're still not at the point where we're actually negotiating text, where we're actually sitting and saying, we all agree with this, yes, let's unbracket it. Or we do disagree with this, we all disagree with this, and let's remove it. So we are still not at that point. And from what was presented yesterday in the plenary and in the different contact groups, it looks like the actual negotiations won't happen until INC-5. Having said that, what we do hope is to have actual shrinking of the text. We do not want to get away from this INC without, with again a 68-page document. We also do not want to get away from this INC without a mandate for intersessional work. So I'm hoping that before Monday, there is there is very sort of structured discussion on intersessional work. So far, some member states have talked about it in different ways for different provisions, for different priorities that we have, but the structured discussion and alignment needs to happen, and it really needs to happen so that we can make the kind of progress that we have not seen so far in this process. Sonia.
There are talks about intersessional work between INC-4 and 5. Are observers welcome to participate here, or just the national delegation?
This is a very difficult question to answer. We don't know yet. We don't even know what intersectional work would look like. Countries have their own perspectives. Some have recommended for a hybrid format. Some want an online format, whereas others want a in-person format. We don't know yet. First, we need to know what we will discuss. We are hopeful that at least some countries will speak for support of observers and civil society participation, because you see the problem, like we've discussed many times, and even right now, is that industry comes under the garb of official delegation in these spaces, so they would still have space, but we as civil society continue to be observers, so we will not have space if we don't have the mandate to be included in these discussions as technical experts and as voices of reason who are the most impacted from plastic pollution. So the hope is that we do, but I won't have an answer until Monday night, and let's hope it's not a very late night.
Thank you so much, Arpita, for walking us through on what to expect in the last 2 days of the negotiations. So for ongoing updates on the Global Plastics Treaty negotiations, be sure to follow our Zero Waste Asia newsroom and Zero Waste Asia news break on our social media platforms. Find us on Instagram and YouTube at Zero Waste Asia and GAIA Asia Pacific on Facebook and LinkedIn. Stay informed with us. Thank you and good night.